Good. Wow. Wow. What a bad start to this one. Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another episode of New England Sports Weekly. As always, I am your host, Sean Metcalf. So take two is better than take one on that one. But hey, we're live. We're doing it live, folks. But anyways, it is another packed week here, and it is. Oh boy, it's been a week since I last saw you guys. If it wasn't such a pain in the ass, I would pan the camera down below the table. Don't worry, folks, we're not we're keeping it family friendly. But man, I was pulling out my electric guitar amp last week, and if you've never been in my house, it is built in 1942, so it's a little smaller. I have an L-shaped bedroom where I've moved the temporary studios, or moved it here for now until we get something more permanent going. And probably right in front of me there's a wall. The L-shaped wall meets, and I rammed my toe, my pinky toe, into that wall. And at first I thought, all right, it just hit it pretty bad, but I'll be good. It kept getting worse and swollen, and I fractured my pinky toe. So that was nice. And then I get up in the morning to do my thing, and I passed out in the bathroom and pulled a wooden shelf down with me, and it hit me right in the bridge of the nose. So, oh man, it has been one hell of a week personally. So, if I make any noises, if I'm dropping some random f bombs and it sounds like I got something going on, it's probably because I maybe stubbed my toe or hit my bad toe off of something here. So we're going through it here, folks. It's but don't worry, it's not. I'm not life or death, nothing like that. I'm just you can all laugh at my expense every else. But I thought I would just fill you in, folks. But other than that, it's been it's been business as usual. Yeah, we could say that at least. But it has been jam packed as far as the New England sports scene has begun. As we left you off last week, things just rolled over again, or keep on rolling, I should say. Is the Patriots released a statement that they were working on a statement with Jerod Mayo, and there's been a lot of other things going on with the Red Sox. So we'll touch on a lot of that here. So we will definitely dive right into that. And without further ado, we will get into the out of the box segment, still brought to you by me. But hey, if 47 brand wants to sponsor this, like the new beautiful Bruins hat that I'm wearing tonight, the all black trucker hat, they can certainly hit me up. That'd be much appreciated. But, anyways, the New England Patriots, as we mentioned, have put out a statement last week advising that they are working on a long-term contract extension to bring Jerod Mayo back, and they are also interviewing for offensive coordinators. Now, that is something that the Patriots never do, as far as with their coaching staff, never really put that out there until something has been finalized and the ink is dry on the contract. And obviously, they never tell us that they're interviewing for positions either. So you could definitely kind of put the pieces together there with, I'm sure, how frustrated Kraft was with the offensive coaching staff and how everything went this year. I mean, can you blame them? Not really. I mean, we were all Robert Kraft. We were all frustrated from that standpoint. Nobody liked watching that offense. And if you did, you're lying. You are lying, sir or ma'am. But it's very interesting. The first time you've ever seen this move by the Patriots as far as putting out a statement such as this. Now, of course, along with that statement, there were a few other additional pieces that have kind of come out since then, of course, as there were some conflicting reports that they were working on it, but then there were that they've reached. So there were kind of some conflicting ones. So some of the reporters out there, the Karen Garigians, the Tommy Currans, they've kind of cleared that up, that they are still working working towards getting that contract. So even though the Patriots kind of made it sound like it was um, imminent of happening, it hasn't yet, but they're still working on that. And Jerod Mayo, in the meantime, since that news came out, was up for the defensive coordinator job for the Browns, but declined to take that interview that he had scheduled and declined it. Then the interview for the Panthers head coaching job, he did decline that as well. So that is a sign of good things to come for the Patriots, possibly. And will Jerod Mayo maybe be the successor in line for Belichick? We'll get into that here in just a moment. But that's also on the table for the Patriots as well. And then, of course, as we mentioned, the Patriots also are looking for offensive coordinator help. And since last week, the recent reports in the last few days have been that Bill O'Brien, the former offensive coordinator for the Patriots from 2010 to 2012, is rumored to be their top candidate. Now, of course, you remember after he left the Patriots, he was the head coach in Penn State, taking over for Joe Paterno after that scandal. And he actually did a pretty good job there in the circumstances he was allotted. And of course, then took the head coaching job with the Houston Texans from 2014 through 2019, I believe it was, before heading over to Alabama. And of course, now looking to get back in the NFL. And it seems like the interest is mutual. There have been no official reports from the O'Brien camp, but from the reports that you're getting out there, that it seems as though that this is more than more than likely to happen. But of course, they have been looking elsewhere as well. As of course, the other rumored is Cliff Kingsbury, although that one's kind of died down a little bit here. Now, Nick Caley is scheduled to have an interview with the Jets, but that he's also an in-house candidate that they're looking at as well. And then on top of that, today, a couple new candidates have been put on the board here as well, as former Pro Bowl and, man, he was a really good receiver, Keenan McCardell. You probably remember him from his time in Jacksonville, was one of the two-headed monsters down there with McCardell and Robinson, two very underrated receivers. And now he has been the wide receivers coach for the Minnesota Vikings under Kevin O'Connell. And of course, obviously he wouldn't be bringing Justin Jefferson as much as I would like that if he were to come here, but he has been rumored to be one of the candidates as far as for the Patriots for their job. And Adrian Clem, a former pick by Bill Belichick, so he was more than just a coach that he knows. Adrian Clem is a former Patriots offensive tackle who was drafted by Belichick in 2000 in the second round. So somebody the Patriots are familiar with. Now, obviously, Adrian Clem did not have a long career here with the Patriots, but he is rumored to be one of the Patriots candidates for offensive coordinator, as he currently is serving as the associate head coach, run game coordinator, O-line coach in Oregon. So he is, and formerly the Steelers offensive line coach as well. So those are the two new candidates. Now, the one that does interest me here that we'll get into a little bit more, but would be Keenan McCardell, with his time in the league, obviously being a very productive receiver and coaching that Minnesota Vikings receiving group there that's had success this year. Obviously, we all know he has a special talent to work with, and Justin Jefferson, but that's kind of one of been the more intriguing one. But obviously, we'll get to those options here as well. And of course, in other news, the Boston Red Sox have made another move today. Now, this one, I actually do like this one. Now, obviously, we're not talking about a top tier free agent anymore, but the former Atlanta Brave in Adam Duvall is now inking a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Boston Red Sox to presumably be their center fielder / left fielder. He does say he prefers left field, but obviously he did win the Gold Glove last year, and previously in 2021, when the Braves won the World Series, he hit 38 home runs and drove in 113 runs to lead the National League. Now he's 34 years old. And of course, you're not going to look to him to be hitting for average. And you don't know if he's ever going to get back to 2021 stats. Now, he has had 3 seasons of hitting 30 home runs, so it's not out of the question, but still, you get anything halfway decent out of him. I mean, at this point of where you are in free agency and how this off season is gone, then I mean, he's a legitimate starting major league outfielder. So let's not put that past him. They didn't just go sign a 4th outfielder in this point in his career. He still is a starting caliber outfielder. Now, would he be a starting caliber outfielder at this point in his career on a playoff team? We don't know. He was a couple of years ago, so we'll see how that unravels for the Boston Red Sox. And of course, they have also been linked to one former shortstop of theirs in Jose Iglesias, who has had a couple stints here with the Boston Red Sox, lastly in 2021. And he was a key contributor down the stretch, although he came in a little too late and wasn't able to play in the playoffs, but still was a big contributor there. So maybe they might look for Jose Iglesias to fill that void that's left by, obviously, Xander Bogaerts leaving, and now with Trevor Story's injury, which could have him miss multiple months of the season and could jeopardize him missing all of 2023. They need help up the middle desperately. Now, obviously, with Duvall coming into the fold, that most likely is going to put Kike Hernandez back in the infield, most likely at short, but we'll see if they sign somebody else. Now, another candidate that they've been also linked to has been Elvis Andrus, who is up there in age. What is he? He's 33 years old, 34. So he's not a spring chicken anymore, but he is a very solid guy with the glove. So at this point in free agency, you're more going to focus on probably getting the better glove that can play every day to try to save runs, because the big 4 shortstops are gone. They're off the books as far as the complete ones with Correa, Bogaerts, obviously, Trey Turner, and Dansby Swanson. So you're not going to get a superstar shortstop. Anyways, those are gone. So if you can get somebody like Iglesias or with Andrews, then pair him up with Kike in the infield, then you're in a pretty solid spot. As well, defensively, I should say. Offensively, there's still a lot to be left to be desired. We're not talking about all stars and I think MLB now has their version of all pro as well. So you're not getting that, but at least you have something. That's what I can say. That's all I have to say is you got something on the books. At least you're trying to put together a solid lineup. So we'll see how that all bears out. And then in Bruins news, they are rumored to be signed to be working heavily on David Pasternak's deal. Now, this coming from WEEI's Rich Keefe is reporting from his sources, although hasn't said, but obviously he said he trusts them very much. That the Boston Bruins, basically what happened is after they initially offered him the contract earlier in their season when it was $10 million, then it went up to it was at $9 million. And then what happened after the Bruins pumped it up to the 8 for 88, which would give him $11 million. That's where his agents basically have kind of paused and be like, okay, they're willing to go up with money. So his agents are just playing the game of trying to get more money. So we'll see if the Bruins will kind of go up again here and maybe go to $12 million, which at this point, he's well worth it. He's one of the best goal scorers in the league. And then, of course, there have been other reports by the Darren Dragers and others out there that are the big time hockey reporters that have kind of gone out there and had similar reports that the Bruins are also working to get David Pastrnak signed to a long-term extension, which obviously you get him inked up and that will be locked up. That will go a long way to securing the future of this franchise for you. And in other Bruins contract news, they did sign fellow Czech line mate in Pavel Zacha to a 4-year extension as well. So Pavel Zacha is going to be on the Bruins for at least the foreseeable future here for the Bruins. So they are starting to get some of their younger core locked in place here. So even though Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci are all in their mid to late 30s, at least the Boston Bruins are getting some of their younger talent locked up. And obviously the major one is going to be David Pastrnak. Getting him locked up for a while is going to be the key there. But once he's in the books, then you'll feel a lot better about the future of this franchise. And obviously there's still going to be a lot of work to do, but it's nice to see that they're working on getting this all straightened out here for their foreseeable future. Let's see. Just trying to get the terms of that contract. Let's see. All right, we'll circle around back to that so we don't have a lot of dead air, but we'll definitely let you know. But anyway, so the Bruins are getting their players locked up long term here as well. So Pavel Zacha is 4 years for $19 million. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I knew it was somewhere around that. Okay, so that's your headlines as far as your out of the box segment here, as well as and just throw in as we get rolling here that the Bruins are underway tonight at home against the Islanders, and then of course on the road against the Islanders, and then the Boston Celtics, who have been on a 7-game win streak, will be taking on the Golden State Warriors tomorrow. So they're going to have a rematch, second rematch of this year of last year's NBA Finals. So that will be a big time showdown that we'll all be tuning in for tomorrow as well. And of course, there've been a little bit of trade rumors swirling around Peyton Pritchard. So will he get moved or not? We will see, as the NBA trade deadline, I believe, is February 9th, if I'm correct. I have to double check on that, but that's coming up a lot faster than we thought. We're zooming through the winter sports season here, folks. All right. As we mentioned off the top of the show, the Patriots are the big topic of discussion today, as they are doing something a little unorthodox when it comes to their coaching search for an offensive coordinator, and with Jerod Mayo. Because like we mentioned, they normally don't get into the business of announcing their contract extensions or working on them or who we're searching for. Bill Belichick, if he had his way, nobody would know a damn thing of what's going on down there in Gillette until game day. And if it was the offseason, you wouldn't know until the draft, until the contract's officially signed, and then you wouldn't know anything until camp shows up if he had his way. But fortunately for us, we get other news. And fortunately for us, Robert Kraft was a Patriots fan before he even owned the team. So he knows how it goes. And that was kind of the surprising thing when we got on the Patriots Twitter and Instagram account the picture of Jerod Mayo saying that they were working on a long-term contract. And as we mentioned off the top of the show, there have been some follow-up reports saying that it's not finalized, but they're working on it. It's getting there. And then, of course, that it's not like he's locked up. So he can still technically, if he found maybe like a head coaching job, if he wanted to take that, he could leave for that. But it seems as though it's going to be more than inevitable that Jerod Mayo in some capacity is going to stay here. Now, what is that going to be? Now, we've heard some interesting things kind of come out of the Patriots locker room, I guess, if you will. Nothing official, but you've heard even Jerod Mayo's kind of made some comments about when they've asked him about his title. He's like, "Oh, title? Whoa, what is that?" And then he made the comments at the end of the year that it was a trash bag day, basically, for all the guys to get their stuff out. So people took that as well and ran with it. But of course, there's been behind the scenes rumblings, at least, and these are all I can't say that these are substantiated rumors. These are just speculation, of course, because that's what we do. We're sports entertainment, but I like to bring sources and at least bring some knowledge to the table. So this is where you kind of got to put a little grain of salt on this. Is just obviously the thought here is that Jerod Mayo has always wanted to have that title of a defensive coordinator so that he can try to be a head coach later on. And obviously that was well before any of this contract stuff was happening as well. So it's not just like all of a sudden, this is what Jerod Mayo, oh, I need a title now. No, this is something that he's kind of wanted the last couple of years to make his coaching kind of candidacy a little more legitimate so that he can be a head coach, because that's been something that he has said that he's wanted. That is something that we know. Now, of course, the Patriots know that Bill Belichick is in his 70s. He's 70, 71 now. So he is, I know he made the comment a long time ago that he doesn't want to be Marv Levy coaching into his 70s, but he has since kind of redone that. He's kind of come back on that. He said basically that was at that time, but now it's different. So I'd imagine Belichick probably would go till 75, is my opinion. He'll go to 75 and he'll call it a day. That's at least that's my humble opinion on that. Nothing to kind of source that, but that's just my opinion. Is 75 and we're done. So what's that? Because he's 71, 72, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that gives you 3 to 4 more years. If you're Jerod Mayo, he's in his 40s. He's in his mid to late 40s now. Or even maybe a little bit younger, because he retired after 2014, a little younger. So yeah, he might not even be he might not even be late 40s. He might be early to mid 40s. But anyways, the point is that he's younger, especially as far as for coaches go. So he obviously has a good relationship with Bill, good relationship with the Crafts, this whole organization. So he's got a good thing going here. Now, obviously, if somebody offers you a head coaching job and it's somewhere that you're like, all right, I got to take this. So if I don't know why the Chargers are hanging on a Brandon Staley, but if they were actually smart enough to finally realize that he's not a good head coach, the analytics are screwing him over, and if they actually got their heads out of their ass, then maybe they would fire him. And then if I'm Jerod Mayo, I would head for the Los Angeles Chargers with that quarterback situation there, with obviously Justin Herbert, who is an amazing young talent, and you have a pretty good team out there. And with Jerod Mayo's skills, that I would head for that one. So basically what I'm saying there is, if there's a job like the Chargers or somewhere else that pops up, yeah, I would run for that job. But of course, I mean, you're in a stable organization as far as ownership, and you know that they're going to give you all the assets that you can to win. As far as here with the Patriots, and that's something that I'm sure that he would like to have, is that type of ownership stability and that type of assets to go with. And from what it sounds like this is probably going to happen. It's just kind of a matter of time now that he's declined some of these interviews so far. So I think it's inevitable. Now, we don't know if they promised him anything, kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because obviously there are rules and regulations that you have to go through. Now, with Jerod Mayo, he's with him being an in-house candidate. I can't remember the exact rules, but I know there are some there that you have to follow. You still have to bring some outside and do whatever your interviews. But if he's going to be kind of like that successor to Bill, then I love that idea, because if we were talking about Patricia or Judge, I'd be like, no, thank you. Get everybody out of here. I don't want anybody associated with those two babbling buffoons, as far as those two. But with Jerod Mayo, he's a guy that he's got a lot of respect with the players. He's still young enough where he connects to them, and he's a very good communicator, because what you hear, what guys like Tommy Kern have said, is that he goes in when they're in the locker room before the game, at halftime, or just like when they're having meetings. He's the guy over Stephen Belichick that will go up and talk to the guys. He's the more of the authoritative type of, I shouldn't say authoritative, but he's more of the vocal type of leader as far as on that defensive side of the coaching staff. So he's a guy that I think connects very well, and I would love to see him take over for Bill. Now, is that and it sounds like this is what the Crafts want, because this is kind of their, you would imagine that it's not Bill saying, okay, social media release this. This would be something obviously that the Crafts would have to okay and do. So that'll be interesting. But I think it's definitely a good direction for the Patriots to head into, is to go with Jerod Mayo, because I think unless you're getting, for me, unless you're getting some type of head, like a new type of coordinator that's been an offensive coordinator to come in and be your head coach, that was with what, the Shanahan or McVay system, where those are those high flying offenses, then I mean, I'm good with having Jerod Mayo as the coach. Now, speaking of offensive coordinators and guys from outside, well, as we mentioned, the Patriots are also in that statement released that they're interviewing for offensive coordinators. Now, of course, the obvious one in the room is Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien, we know his history here with the Patriots. We talked about it earlier from his first stint here. He's the obvious choice. And it seems like both sides have a lot of mutual agreement here. And it seems like this is just a matter of time before this one happens as well. But of course, there are some other candidates that have that we've heard about. Obviously, there's tight ends coach Nick Caley, which is kind of interesting that they would pivot to Caley after he was already in-house this year. But yet you brought Matt Patricia and Joe Judge onto the offensive staff, and it went horrible for them, and you didn't even give Caley a chance. So that would kind of be odd, at least in my opinion. It would feel kind of odd to be like, all of a sudden just be like, okay, Caley, we made you sit here and watch this with a first row seat and watch this offense kind of crash and burn this year. But here, you take the reins now. Now, of course, I have a lot more confidence than I do in Patricia and Judge. So that's the talent there. I'm not worried about with Caley. It just kind of feels a little awkward to be like, hey, we just crashed this car for you. Do you want to come fix it for us? We know you were in the back seat here. And it's kind of, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I would feel better if it's a guy like Bill O'Brien. But of course, we'll kind of get back. We'll turn right back around here to Bill in a moment. But that's one of the in-house candidates, and some of those outside ones that we talked about earlier is we have Clem, who, I mean, I'm not all juiced up about that one, but at least it's somebody from outside that's worked with the Steelers now, worked at Oregon, and hell, maybe if he wanted to come back to the NFL, maybe he comes back here and becomes the offensive line coach, because we need a good one. So that would be interesting to see if maybe he does that. But I mean, Clem going to Oregon at an innovative type of offensive school out there, that would be kind of an interesting one. But I don't know how far out Belichick kind of wants to reach outside of his circle, because that always seems to be the case, is Belichick is comfortable staying inside that circle, which Bill O'Brien would qualify for everything. He qualifies as being a Bill guy that's been in that circle. Also, he qualifies as being one of those, as being a guy that we all want and would trust, because we've seen how well he's done here and what he's done for an offense. And now he's worked down in Alabama as well, getting to know a little bit of that system, and he would know Mac as well. So Bill O'Brien is like the obvious choice here, and that's my front runner. That's my favorite to take the job. And as I mentioned this a million times last year during the offseason, before the news came out that it seemed like it was going to be Patricia taking over, that I wanted Bill O'Brien to be the guy to take over. So there's no secret there who I want. But the one interesting one here, if they are going to bring in, at least out of the people that we know of, because I think Cliff Kingsbury's kind of fallen off there. I don't think there's anything that's going to happen there with Cliff. But the one that is interesting to me, as we talked about him a little bit earlier, was Keenan McCardell, who is a guy that's played a long time in the NFL. has over 1,100 yards, over 60 touchdowns at receiver. He was a really good, really underrated wide receiver there with Jacksonville. He actually was drafted by Bill when Bill was with the Cleveland Browns in 92. So, and he played a long time in the league, won a Super Bowl in 2002 with the Buccaneers. So it'll be interesting to see what he would bring to the table, because he's obviously right now he is the wide receivers coach for the Minnesota Vikings. After Kevin O'Connell took the head coaching job, he brought him in to be his wide receivers coach. And obviously that whole system that Kevin O'Connell comes from, that obviously that McCardell is coaching under now, is a branch, if you will, of the Sean McVay tree, because that's where because Kevin O'Connell was the quarterbacks coach, and then offensive coordinator, I should say. Elevated from quarterbacks coach and went to offensive coordinator there with the Rams when they won their Super Bowl last year. And he turned around that Minnesota squad. Yes, I know they were frauds in that playoff game, and trust me, I put down $100 to win 1,400 on that Vikings team, and I know I got egg on my face, and I know people will say, "Wow, it's your own damn fault for taking the Vikings in that one." But hey, I've won some decent sized bets this year taking the Vikings in those ones, especially that Vikings and Bills game. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some. But anyways, getting back to what's important is that the Patriots, if they brought in Keenan McCardell, it's kind of all part of that McVay tree in a way. That offense that's more wide open, base set is 3 wide receivers, and knows how to work, knows how to get guys, those receivers open, and would be a great fit. In my opinion, be a great fit for guys like a Kendrick Bourne and a Jacoby Myers, and for Mac Jones to kind of spread things open and be more complex, but at the same time not twist yourself in a pretzel as far as with Mac Jones, as far and get all frustrated with him as well. And then if you can go get a top flight wide receiver to bring in here, I think that would be really, really good to kind of implement some of that Sean McVay style offense. Kevin O'Connell, and I know you can say, yeah, sure, they're going to have a good wide receiver, their stats and a good offense when you got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Hawkinson, but still, trust me, if you put a bad coach in front of them, then the guys like Justin Jefferson are still going to get their numbers, but that offense wouldn't have been as elevated as it was this year without having that type of system. So I do like what he could bring to the table. Now, obviously, he's not inside the Belichick circle. Well, he's kind of, I guess if you want to link him back to Belichick drafting him with the Browns, sure. But that was a long time ago. But it would be interesting to see if maybe he's one of those guys that they bring in to be to interview here for the Patriots, because that would be really interesting to be honest, is because I if it's not Bill O'Brien, then honestly I kind of want to wipe it clean and bring in somebody else in here. But and I think McCardell, now that he's been linked, would be somebody that I'd be interested in. I've kind of talked myself into him here over the course of the day, if we're being honest. But I do, that's intriguing to me. It is very intriguing. And again, just kind of circling back though, McCardell would probably be my number 2 guy, but still, again, the number 1 has got to be Bill O'Brien, just with all the familiarity he has. He's worked well with this coaching staff before. He's going to be able to come in, work seamlessly with this group. He's liked by Bill. I know they kind of had a little bit of blow up as he kind of went out the door, but again, they worked well together. They had a really good working relationship for the most part. And then, of course, the ownership likes him. He's the type of guy that Mac Jones can go back and forth with in a good way, and be able to, if Mac Jones asked why. I know everybody made fun of Mac. Oh, he's the why guy. He's the one that keeps asking why all the time. And why do you keep questioning him? Well, when your offense sucks and you ask him, why are we doing the same thing? And why we keep doing this when we should be doing something else? And I know oh, people want to be like, well, why aren't you just a yes man? And why aren't you just doing what the coaches tell you to do? And maybe da 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 da. Did you see the offense this year? I know I'm not going to start going back down this road, but let's just remember what this offense looked like last year. Do you blame Mac Jones? And this is a guy, if you brought in Bill O'Brien, when Mac asks why, he can actually get a competent answer from Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien can actually lay it out to him and be like, yeah, if we run this route concept, then that opens up X, Y, and Z, where it allows you to, we can do, and then that allows us later on in the game to do X, Y, and Z. And you catch the drift. He's actually going to be able to answer Mac and tell him why this is a good idea to do this. Or he might actually be like, yeah, Mac, you have a good idea. Well, actually, now that you bring that up, I actually have this part of the playbook that we can go to now. So they could actually work in concert together. And Bill O'Brien, we know that Brady can be hard to work with as far as with offense coordinators because Brady is a encyclopedia. He's the greatest of all time. So we've seen that how this year with Brian Leftwich, who it wasn't the smoothest of seasons. And Brady worked pretty well with Bill O'Brien here. I mean, that was the two tight end set that they had Gronk and Hernandez, and then Martellus Bennett came in later on, and they ran a pretty good system there. So, I mean, he's going to work well with Mac, in my opinion, because he already had a little bit of exposure during that playoff run in 2020 with Mac, because he came in a little late down in Bama, but he does have experience, and this is a guy that we know that O'Brien likes. So it'll be interesting to see that. Now, of course, what I kind of want to throw out there as well, because we just talked about that he likes Mac, is that I know there have been a lot of kind of rumors out there that what's going to happen with Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. Now that we're kind of getting, now that we mentioned Mac and how he gets along with the coaching staff. And now, obviously, the Vegas odds, if you've seen them, because they take the Ravens off the books because they're probably like a minus. They're a heavier favorite, I should say, to bring back Lamar. But if things continue to get contentious between both sides, and if he actually walks and doesn't sign a contract, the Patriots were a slight favorite. They were a plus 400 or 450. And then the next one, I believe, was like 4. It was only like 10 or 20 points behind him. So it's still not a long. 450 is not a long shot, but it's also you're kind of creeping up there where it's like, all right, it's not a certainty, but we can see it. So Lamar Jackson, if I don't honestly, obviously, I would like to have Lamar. He's more talented than Mac. I will say that. I question a little bit of the long-term health with Lamar, but he's more dynamic. He's a better quarterback than Mac at this point in their careers. So you would get a true franchise quarterback. Now, obviously, you're going to have to tailor your game to him. And that also kind of brings me back to the offensive coordinator position here. So kind of wrapping everything up in a nice bow here is that, yes, I know people would be happy to get Lamar Jackson, but then does that mean that if you went out and signed Bill O'Brien first, because obviously getting that offensive coordinator is going to happen before free agency happens, before the draft happens. So if you bring in a guy like Bill O'Brien, is Bill O'Brien going to say, yeah, I want to work with a mobile quarterback such as Lamar Jackson, which might actually work a little bit better because he has worked with Bryce Young. Now, I know Bryce Young isn't the same type of quarterback that Lamar is, because obviously Lamar is more run-oriented, but Bryce Young was a dual threat type of guy down in Bama, a little more with the arm. But will Bill O'Brien, or if it's Nick Caley, or if it's Keenan McCardell, or Clem, or Cliff Kingsbury, if you want to throw his name back in, whoever it is, whoever your offensive coordinator is,
Are they going to want to have that style of quarterback? Or do they have somebody else in mind? Or are they going to say, no, Mac is the one that I want to stay with? Now, personally, this whole like situation as far as when it comes to Mac Jones and who's going to be the quarterback, I mean, unless Lamar Jackson becomes a free agent, you can just sign him for money. Then I would seriously think about that. But that's obviously Belichick's never kind of been the one to pony up a $225 million contract to a quarterback. He wouldn't even do it for the best quarterback of all time a couple of 3-4 years ago. But obviously, if you could get a guy like Lamar, and I'd be down for it. But at the same time, if the Ravens go ahead and franchise tag him and then maybe intend to trade him, are you going to swallow hard and send over 2 to 3 first round picks and some other high rounders, second, third rounders, and then fork over the cash? The cash for me, I don't have a problem with the cash. Whatever. Go spend the cash. Do whatever you want with the cash. Have Kraft write him a blank check. That's fine with me. But are you going to want to give up those first round picks when you still need help at offensive tackle? You need a number one wide receiver or a number one offensive weapons, like another number one tight end, but you're probably better off getting a wide receiver. Those are easier to find. You need that number one offensive weapon. You need more. You're going to need more help back in the secondary because obviously you're probably going to lose Jonathan Jones in the offseason. You're going to need, and I would like to see him get somebody that's a little bit bigger and physical at corner. And then with Devin McCourty probably going to walk, you're probably going to need to get some more help at safety. Even though I do like Phillips, I obviously love Kyle Duggar. If you can get Jabril Peppers to come back, I like that, but you're still going to need another piece, another one that you can start to develop to take over from McCourty in long term. So and obviously I would still like to see him get help at linebacker. There's still a lot of other holes that you're going to have to fill. So are you going to want to give up that high draft capital when, yes, bringing in Lamar Jackson and having a number one quarterback is probably the most important thing to do in football. But if you're not going to have all that, the arsenal to equip to equip if it's Mac or who else, if you don't have those things around, those pieces to bring in young players to fill those holes and to try to develop, then how good is that? Now, honestly, I don't think it's going to happen for the Patriots. And I have been on the books here the last couple of years that I believe in Mac. I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to Mac Jones. I still believe in Mac big time. Yes, he has some blame to put on his shoulders for this year. I will not deny that. But he absolutely got screwed over with the offensive coaching situation. And I still think this is very salvageable. I'm not one of those guys banging the table like, we need to get rid of Mac. We need to go get so-and-so. Like I said, unless you get a franchise quarterback, like I said, if Lamar Jackson does become available and you're willing to spend the money, I would seriously think about that. But you're going to have to change a lot of things. But I'm if it stays the way it is with Matt, if you don't obviously have that ability to go get one of those young, talented star quarterbacks, which if you have them, why would you give them up? I like Mac Jones. I think he can be a guy that you can win with. You just have to get pieces around him. And I just absolutely, I love it when people are like, well, if you're one of those quarterbacks that has to have everything perfect, you have to have all these pieces, you have to have the pieces around him, then how good are you really? It's like, okay, give me Tom Brady, give me Aaron Rodgers, give me Patrick Mahomes, give me these guys, and don't give them all this. If all right, so probably Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, you give them the Patriots roster, they still make the playoffs with it because the Patriots were only a game away. But I don't know if they'd be serious Super Bowl contenders with this offense. Yeah, you'd have one of the best quarterbacks in the league if you had one of those guys. But You still don't have a competent offensive coordinator. You don't have a number one weapon where you can just be like, all right, we're just throwing it up to them when we need them in this standpoint. So for me, it just drives me nuts. It's like every quarterback needs pieces around them. Just some of them might need a few more. They might need more than one of them around them. They might need just a little bit more than the other to get by. But I think Mac Jones can do it. You just got to give him the right coordinator and the right pieces. But I know I could go on and on about that, but that's just what irritates me. It's like you can win with Mac. You just have to get him the right pieces. So, and again, this all goes back to who you bring in for an offensive coordinator. So if you bring in the right one, is who's he going to want as his quarterback? And I think the Patriots are probably going to try to find a guy that wants to stick with Mac Jones, because they're not going to want to move off of Mac after spending this draft capital. At least give him another year or two. And I think he's going to have a nice bounce back season coming up here in 2023. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that whole situation, that whole coaching carousel that's going to be coming through. Now, the other big story that happened today was the Boston Red Sox did sign, I say big, quote unquote, big story, but the Red Sox signed Adam Duvall to a 1-year, $7 million deal. Now, Adam Duvall is 34 years old. So we're not talking about obviously signing a 1-year deal. We're not talking about we're not talking to him being there long term. I totally get it. But Adam Duvall he's a legitimate major league outfielder. We're not talking about having a guy that comes in and has a fourth outfielder. God, I love Rob Refschneider. He filled in admirably last year down the stretch with a lot of injuries. But he's not a guy I want to see out there 162 games a year or for 130 games. But Adam Duvall is a guy that was a little bit of a late bloomer here in his major league career. He didn't come up until he was 25 years old. And his breakout season was at 27 with the Cincinnati Reds, when he hit 33 home runs, with 31 doubles, 103 RBIs, and batted .241. And then the next year followed that up with 31 home runs, 99 RBIs, and batted .249, and had 37 doubles. So this is an extra. He does have a lot of pop. You got to give him that. He's got a lot of pop between home runs and doubles, so he definitely racks those up. Now, obviously, you're not going to rely on him to be anywhere near 300. The best season average-wise that he had was back in 2019, his second year in Atlanta, when he hit 267. And then, but this is a guy that has had 3 seasons of 30 home runs. His last time he hit 30 home runs was in 2021, when he hit 38 home runs, had 100, and then led the National League with 113 runs batted in. He started the season with Miami and then was traded to the Atlanta Braves later on that season. And then ended up winning a World Series there with the Atlanta Braves. But the point here being with Adam Duvall is that, yes, are we getting a guy that's going to be an everyday outfielder for your next 5 years? Did you get an Aaron Judge? Did you get the big splash outfielder? No. We're shopping in the bargain bin right now. And it's Chaim Bloom's favorite thing to do. Let's go dive into that dollar DVD bin at Walmart. Hey, every now and then you find one of those movies that you're like, hey, I haven't seen that one in a while. That's a collector, or that's like a quote unquote special edition one, or whatever it is. But every now and then you find a decent movie in there. We're not finding any recent Oscar movies in there. We're not finding any up-to-date, really good movies, but you know what? Maybe on a rainy Saturday, you watch it and it works and it fills it in. And and this is Chaim Bloom's favorite thing to go diving into the dumpster. Now, this one I actually don't mind at all because at the state of where we are, there's no other big free agents. And are you going to give up Tristan Casas, who you've been waiting for years, Marcelo Meyer, Brian Bayo? You're going to give up those guys that you're actually, two of those three guys right now are on your major league roster and that you're expecting big things from? At least that's to start the season. You're expecting Casas to be your everyday first baseman who's what, 22, 23 years old. Brian Bayo, who's been a guy that has been working with Pedro and is a guy that kind of, after his first stint where he kind of fell flat, when he came back up for the second part of the stretch, the second part of September there, when nobody was probably watching anymore, when they were far out of the playoff picture, when he actually pitched pretty well and it looked like he was setting up for a good year this year. Are you going to want to give up one of those guys? I would love Brian Reynolds. But to me, Brian Reynolds is the type of guy that if you were the 2021 Red Sox, where you already had your core guys with Betts, with Bogarts, Devers, obviously Chris Sale in the rotation. Well, I'm sorry, no. You had Evaldi and you had all those guys, but then that's when they went and got Kyle Schwarber. But if you were in a situation like that, or you're one of these teams, obviously any of those Red Sox teams over the past, or any of those, you look at a team like the Yankees who need some outfield help, but they're obviously in contention for a championship. You look at any of these other teams out there, hell, even like the San Francisco Giants, you look at teams that are legitimately close to the playoff race or close to a championship, competing for that. That's where Brian Reynolds, because Brian Reynolds is a guy that has 20 plus home run power. He's got all the speed. He can hit for average. He's a switch hitter. I would love to have Brian Reynolds. He is a star that I would love to have, but he's the type of guy, if you're close to that championship, that's where I would bring him in. Now, obviously, if you could get him for a decent price, which it's not going to be the case because they're already asking a lot for him, then I'd be like, yeah, sure, go trade for Brian Reynolds, but are you going to want to give up these pieces? And listen, I've already railed on Chaim Bloom for being the guy that holds on to all those, but also you have to know the ones that you don't want to trade. And for me, it's Myers and Bello for sure. Casas, unless like the perfect situation came along, like if you could get a stud young pitcher to kind of anchor this rotation, then yes, go ahead and do it. Or if you're getting a Mike Trout level type of guy, then yeah, I'll give up that first baseman. I'll give up your top prospect. But it's just, where are you in your franchise? Are you right there ready to compete? Where I think Brian Reynolds is more of that luxury item, when I think if you're going to use those trade chips, I'd rather go get a Corbin Burns, a Shane Bieber, or I doubt the Marlins are going to try, out of the guys they're willing to trade. I doubt that Alcantara is going to be a guy, but if it's Alcantara or Trevor Rogers or Pablo Lopez, those type of young stud pitchers they have, that's where I'd be more willing to listen to a guy to give up a Casas. But again, this is a guy that you've been waiting for and trying to build around. So it's to me, these type of signings, when you get a guy like Duvall, yeah, it's not going to move the needle for you, but at least you get a solid everyday outfielder. That was my fear after all those injuries and after Bogarts left. It's like, we're going to have to watch guys that shouldn't be playing every day. Like, I like Arroyo. Arroyo is a good second baseman, a good middle infielder that you can plug in. He can play. He can even play a little bit of third, but you can plug him in those occasions that you need him to fill in. But for me, he's not a guy that I want to see every day. And in the outfield, Jarren Duran burned hot as the sun in 2021. And trust me, I fell under that spell of, oh, yeah, let's bring him up. He had like 20 something home runs in the minors. This kid looks like he's changed his swing. He could come up here and be the next great center fielder, be the next great outfielder for the Red Sox. Then he struck out a lot. He's had a lot of problems at the plate. And then he's had some embarrassing moments out in the outfield with trying to track fly balls in center. Then he's had some comments that have kind of gotten him in hot water. Obviously he could turn things around. I'm not saying he can't. But did you want to rely on a full season of Jarren Duran? Of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Yoshida. But then you have Verdugo, who's average at best in the outfield. And it's like, and up the middle between second and in short, after you lost Trevor Story, you didn't have Xander Bogaerts anymore. What the hell were you going to do? But at least bringing in Duvall, you have a guy that's won a Gold Glove last year. He's had 3 30 home run seasons. One of them was in 2021. So it's not like we're talking about he did this 10 years ago. He just did it 2 years ago, hit 30 home runs. And of course, this is a lineup that was absolutely starving for somebody to hit behind Rafael Devers. Now, obviously, you do have Justin Turner and you have Duvall now, who are guys that at least you can put there, and they might be, and if they get on, they have a little bit of power potential, because Turner's a guy that hasn't been a 30 home run guy, but he's been a 20 plus home run guy multiple times. So these are guys that, again, they're going to be fill-in guys for the next year or 2 years until the Red Sox are ready to go out and get the big-time guys, like if Juan Soto doesn't sign an extension, or go get Shohei Ohtani, go make these big-time trades. Actually, instead of like, oh, maybe we'll get a fringe guy, or not a fringe, because Brian Reynolds isn't fringe, but if you're going to spend those big prospects, instead of getting Brian Reynolds, who's more of a nice complementary star, maybe you'll go get a true building block of your lineup star. So maybe that's what is. As long as you bring these guys in, you're going to put competitive at bats up, and they're not just going to be like you're fielding the Double-A Portland Sea Dogs, although some of those players on the Sea Dogs might be better than what you got going on up in Boston, but I digress there. So I do, long story short is I do like this signing. It's a good move for them, but again, there's still a lot more they can do. I think they're going to need to go out and sign a Jose Iglesias, because again, right now, with that move, it does allow Kike to slide back into the infield, most likely right now at shortstop, which has been more of a natural position. So maybe either my opinion is you still should get a middle infielder like an Elvis Andrus or Jose Iglesias, that between Kike and whoever you sign, you can put whichever one at second and short, because you've seen those guys switch around, and Kike has been a little bit more utilitarian, so maybe he can go over to second. But the point being is, you at least shore up and have some good defense in the middle with having Kike, and then having a Iglesias or Andrews there, and then you'd feel a little bit more comfortable. So you bring in Duvall, then if you sign a middle infielder there, and then put Arroyo on your bench, then at least you have everyday players. You have everyday players. I know that sounds horrible to say, talking about the Boston Red Sox, when you only have one superstar in Rafael Devers, when a franchise that's had buckets of superstars at times, or at least superstars and other stars, and they've had plenty of talent on the team, and this team just seems like they're just absolutely starving for more talent, because right now it just seems like it's Rafael Devers and then everybody else on this team. So I feel bad for Rafi as far as what he's got going for him right now. But I just wish that they had other people around him, because what we're about to watch this year could just be ugly. Because obviously without Trevor, because Trevor Story was the other legitimate bat that you had. You actually had two legitimate bats with Devers and Story, but now you're down to one. You're down to one, and man, but this is where you can get, maybe Duvall hits 25 home runs this year, and if he plays good, solid defense, then you found something out there on the outfield. And then, of course, if Yoshida can come in and be that contact machine at the top of the order, then you have something there. Then at least you have some competence. Now, obviously, the bottom of the lineup is going to be maybe not a black hole, but it's not going to be your friend either. It's going to be you're going to have some automatic outs down there, but maybe. And then if the other important thing is going to be if Tristan Cassius can actually, if he can show you that he was a legitimate prospect, that he's not just another name that flames out and turns into nothing. If he can actually be the next big middle of the order bat there that you can stick with Rafi, then he might have some things. But we're talking about a lot of ifs. I've just brought up 4 or 5 ifs. You have one certainty in Rafi. We all know that Rafael Devers offensively can be in the MVP conversation. He's that good. But what else does he have around him? And you can't expect to compete for a playoff spot with 5 to 6 ifs in your lineup. You can't. You can't just duct tape it together and expect it to work. So at least now with Duvall, at least you're getting an everyday guy, and at least you have a better shot of maybe being respectable. But again, it's hard to sit here right now and feel, even with Duvall in the fold, it makes you feel a little bit better than you did yesterday, but there's still a lot of work to do. And now, obviously, if they can get some miracle trades in between now to get maybe a anchor for that rotation, then I would feel better. And if by some miracle, some team you can get a star bat to bring in here too, but obviously that that's fantasy land. So in reality, what they did with bringing in Duvall, I'm happy with what they have for what circumstance they're under now. You at least were able to get an everyday guy. So we'll hopefully we won't see too many embarrassments out there in the outfield now, because you have an everyday outfielder and you're not having to rely on Jarren Duran playing one of those corner spots out there. That was getting spooky, because after Trevor Story went down, you knew Kike was probably going to have to go into the infield. As much as you wanted him to stay at center field, you didn't have much of a choice. But now at least you push Duran back down to AAA, or maybe being your fourth guy is your outfield. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm very skeptical. I'm not going to be holding my breath on this Red Sox team. I'll be surprised if they're sniffing around a wild card spot in June or anything. It'll be interesting, but maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe we'll get 2013 all over again, where they signed a bunch of, that's who you're bringing in? You're bringing in a washed-up Shane Victorino, a washed-up Ryan Dempster, a washed-up Mike Napoli. Cool. And then they win a World Series. But again, that team had David Ortiz already there. He had Dustin Pedroia already there when Dustin Pedroia was still in his prime. You had, obviously, John Lester was anchoring that staff. You had John Lackey, who, yes, he might have had a couple bad years, but he bounced back and had a good one. You had Jacoby Ellsbury. So you at least had a solid lineup there. You had established guys, you had everyday guys that you had the David Ortiz and the Dustin Pedroia. You had two big guys that were already there, and you had Jacoby Ellsbury. I think that was his last year before he left. And so you had establishment there. But again, it wasn't the most impressive group, but at least it was more impressive than what this group has. Because right now the only guy I'm scared of is Ravi. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they'll shock us. I'm not holding my breath. Not putting any money on it, but maybe they will. I doubt it. But as we kind of wrap things up here, and actually one thing, sorry, I just want to touch on really quick here because we talked about it, was David Pastrnak. So that sounds like that's going to kind of that's coming to that might get wrapped up here. There's been just some talk that the reason why it's kind of being held up a little bit is the Pastrnak side maybe looking for a little bit of money after the Bruins have already kind of been like, yeah, we'll give you more money. So it's kind of seems like a little bit more of a negotiation ploy, but it sounds like he more or less wants to kind of stay here. So I know that was the quick thing that I wanted to touch on, because if you're able to wrap him up, because this is a guy that everybody's like, oh yeah, every time he scores a goal, they make a joke. Oh, the price goes up, the price goes up. I mean, I already thought he was going to be in that 11 to 12 million dollar standing anyways. I didn't think this was going to be a guy they're going to have to they could cheap out on like some of the other ones that they have on, like obviously the Charlie McAvoys, or not that McAvoy was cheap, as what, $9 or $10 million. I mean, I'm talking about like the Marchand and the Bergerons, where they signed them for what, $7, $8, $9 million, where they're getting them a little bit below market. Now to get a guy that's going to challenge McDavid, because McDavid's going to beat him in assists and overall points, but a guy that's going to challenge Connor McDavid for the goal lead this year, because what, McDavid's at what, 37, 38, and Pasta's at 35, at least going into tonight's game. Don't know what's happening right now, but so that's a guy that you have to have in the fold. He's a legitimate superstar. This is a guy. This is their version of Rafi Devers. Except for they have a complete team around him. But anyways, you got to make sure that you sign him, and it sounds like that's going to happen here. And just that progress that it sounds like they've made is more. It's more encouraging to me, and it just kind of sounds like it's just going to be a matter of time before those two sides be like, okay, we're willing to give you a little bit more money. And it's probably, for me, they're probably going to settle on about 12 million a year, 12.5 million a year. And because that sounds like probably what that's going to end up being. And it's going to be a worthwhile contract because David Pastrnak's what, 25, 26 years old. He's still very young. He's still got a lot of years left. And this is a guy that's he's already blowing up the charts as far as scoring records here for the Boston Bruins. He's that good of a goal scorer and overall scorer for this team. So that'll be interesting to see if we get some news by next week's show, if maybe he's signed, or maybe by the All-Star break, we'll see if they come to an agreement. Now, as we like to do, obviously now with fantasy over, there's no more fantasy on the show, but we are still going to bet, and we'll probably continue the bet segment after football as well, because there's obviously other sports that I like to bet on as well. But now with the NFL playoffs going on, the one game that our one big bet for this week, and this one for me is kind of obvious, but I love it. And this is my team to go back to the Super Bowl and represent the AFC this year and possibly even win it, is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bengals do have to go on the road. And for me, the Buffalo Bills didn't look all that great against yes, they ended up winning the game, but it was what, 34-31 over the Miami Dolphins. So we're talking about a team that barely survived a number 7 seed. A number 7 seed Miami Dolphins with their third string quarterback. Now, maybe you can just chalk it up to they were kind of sleepwalking through because they knew they were most likely going to have to play Cincinnati next week. But for me, I am riding the Cincinnati Bengals in this one. They are a plus 180 on the money line. So I'm going to take the Bengals on the money line. I'm going to take the over 48.5 and throw in, for me, because T. Higgins didn't get a touchdown last week. So I am going to go with a T. Higgins touchdown, which gives me plus 850 on those odds. And actually, I'm going to throw this in as well. for T. Higgins receiving yards on the 59.5, so it gets to 60. So that gives you to plus 1,100. So you put a good cool 20, and that gets you to 240. Or if you just want to play with the T. Higgins anytime touchdown and you do a $20 bet, you still get 190. So either way you slice it, take the Bengals, take the over, and for me, I'm going with the T. Higgins anytime touchdown on the minimum bet here and going with 190. Or if you throw in basically 59.5 yards, that gets you to plus 1,100 and wins you 240. So that's my big bet that I love there is the Cincinnati Bengals over the Buffalo Bills on the road. And that would send the Bengals to the AFC Championship game in all likelihood to play the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is going to be our one big bet for this week. And that one, I really, really love that one. So that's one I'm definitely gonna stick with on that end of things. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for us this week on New England Sports Weekly. And just remember to tune in next week as we will monitor what's going on with the Patriots offseason, of course, with the coaching staff. If they do find an offensive coordinator or if anything wraps up with Jerod Mayo's contract, or if he shockingly does find a head coaching job and takes that. And of course, we will keep you up to date on the NFL playoffs as well. Anything going on with the Boston Red Sox, they make any more moves. And of course, I know we haven't gotten into a lot of the winter sports season with the Bruins and the Celtics the last couple weeks, but of course, they've just been rolling right along. They've been winning and winning and winning. So there haven't been a lot of outside of breaking down the games. They've been both teams have been absolutely rolling, but we'll try to get into a little bit of them next week, as well as we did mention the Peyton Pritchard thing there. So we'll talk about a little bit more of those two teams next week as well. And remember, every Wednesday night at 8:00, we do the live stream right here on YouTube. So search for New England Sports Weekly and get your fill of the podcast. And if you can't join the show live, you can always find us on Spotify and SoundCloud as well. Download the podcast and listen at any time, no matter what you're doing. And of course, if you're listening to the live stream, you can always drop a comment in the live section. We're always happy to read those. And then, of course, if you have any other questions, you can send it to my personal account at Sean_Met28 on Twitter, and the same for Instagram. And then, of course, if you can't find that, or if you'd rather, you can, or not if you'd rather, no, you must. I'll make a demand. You must follow the show accounts of New England's at NE Sports WK on Instagram and NE Sports Weekly on Twitter. And send me any questions, comments, likes, whatever you want on there. Just keep it a little bit clean as far as some of it, but just send me any questions there. So that's how you can follow us. That's how you can watch us. And I hope you had a good week last week and have a good weekend coming up here, folks. And we'll be with you next Wednesday night on another episode of New England Sports Weekly. Have a good one, folks.